I am Dominique. I'm the customer marketing manager here at Goodshuffle Pro, but I am not your speaker for today. Today, you all will be hearing from Jim Mariano. You all are here today to talk event rental, SEO, and that is something I am not an expert on, but Jim is.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Dominique. My name is Jim Mariano. I ran backyard tent rental in Boston for 18 years. Some of that time it was a side hustle. Towards the later half, it was my full-time endeavor. I think it's important to mention right out of the gate, I'm not just some marketing nerd. Everybody listening or watching this. So I've got real firsthand experience in the event rental space, running my own business. And even prior to that, in high school and in college during the summers, I worked for a giant tent rental company, which is how I kind of got into the space and fell in love with it. I've got a good background in party and event rentals. And while I was growing my business in my 20s, early 30s, my day job was in digital marketing for a large publicly traded company called Constant Contact, which you might be familiar with, doing exactly the things we're talking about today, right? So SEO, website conversion, actually Google Ads was a big part of my job. So I've done this at the highest level for tech companies, and then for my own rental company. And now with my business, we do this for over or around 250-ish clients. So that's the background and the context. I'm thrilled to be doing this. Nobody knows everything about SEO. It is kind of Google's secret recipe, right? So we're all just taking best practices, trying to lean into this as best we can from the info that Google gives us. There is no 100% source of truth to give our businesses the best possible chance to rank highly and to be visible. And what we're talking about today is, what does that mean moving forward in the era of AI? So let's move ahead on the slides, if you don't mind. All right, so we covered that. All right, so I would just want to start with, forget about your business for a second. Just think about yourself as a person who uses Google or these AI tools, right? The nature of search has fundamentally changed. For the first time in 20 years, Google has some competition in how people find information online, right? So these AI tools, Gemini, GPT, Claude, whatever, this is the first time in 20 years where Google's had their core service challenged, right? And Google is in the game. They're not, I personally think they're going to be a winner in this thing. But how people search has changed, right? For the last 20 years, we've all been programmed to use keywords, right? What are the keywords? Keep it short. Google even introduced the autofill, right? As you're searching, it kind of knows where you're going with it. So the way we search for things has changed. It used to be go to Google, do a short little keyword search, hit a website, check it out, go back to Google, compare. Now with AI, you don't just get 10 blue links on a page and you have to go choose your own adventure and go find this info. You get answers, right? So the AI, it's predictive, right? It can hallucinate, it's making suggestions, but it's trying to do its best to just answer your question rather than just giving 10 blue links on a page and make you go hunt for the info, right? So that's how things have fundamentally changed, right? So if you could, let's go ahead one. So we mentioned it's no longer just a keyword search, right? I don't know about you guys listening or watching this, but I have full-blown dialogues, right? I'm using the voice feature. I'm asking it questions. So it's going to become a lot more conversational than just a keyword search, right? So one thing I should mention is, because of this shift from, hey, here's a bunch of links, go click on stuff, to here's an answer, what you might notice if you're looking at your analytics, if you're tracking this stuff, you may look at your SEO or your search traffic and say, why am I down 30% versus last year? And the answer is, if these tools, if Google in their AI search results or ChatGPT, if they're just giving people answers, then a lot more of these searches result in what we call zero click. So I don't have to click. The answer's right in front of me, right? Like the silly example I'll use, I was trying to make mojitos the other day. And instead of having to click and go to somebody's food blog and scroll down and read, it just shows up in the search results in the AI search box, right? So that search no longer even ended up on a click, right? I just got an answer. So the nature of this thing is certainly changing. So let's go next slide. All right, so the common mistakes, right? Where do rental companies typically go wrong? We see when somebody wants to engage with us. So number one, what used to be SEO was, oh, we'll pay someone and they'll write a bunch of content, right? They'll write a bunch of blogs. And honestly, it's fluff. A long blog post that nobody reads. It's probably written by AI anyway. So I think the blog post days are dead. And let's face it, blog in general, text in general, has been replaced by video. Right? People want to watch an Instagram reel or a YouTube short. So I think the days of saying, oh yeah, we're making a bunch of content through blog, is it helpful still? To some degree, but the game is changing. Next, this one's a really common one. So fact check your own website or yourself as you're searching for businesses or services. You've got what I call the Cheesecake Factory menu, right? You go to a website, you go to a business, and there's just a page that says our services or our rentals, right? It's one giant page that just kind of lists out everything they do. And what you're going to see throughout this presentation is I don't want to do that. I want to have targeted pages for all of our best content, right? And Dominique mentioned, I'm going to use this silly dance floor example throughout this thing. So we'll get into that in a second. But essentially, I'd love to see your website have pages for the items you know are your best winners. So a page for tent packages, tables and chairs, dance floor, right? Don't make these machines think or work. Just give them the absolute perfect solution, right? On my company, I had a page on my site just for dance floor rental, right? This was such a perfect page, dance floor rental Boston. And I have a page that talks all about it. So as a reward, Google ranked that page really highly. I would get constant inbound leads for it, right? And it's not because I'm the biggest company in Boston or I had the best dance floor. It's because I had a page gift wrapped and ready to go to show as a great search result, right? So that's kind of one of the other typical kind of common mistakes. Number 3 is also going to be a common thread throughout this presentation. It's Google reviews. And we're going to get into that in a bit. But marketing is marketing, right? Every company is going to say they're the best. They have the best customer service, the best price. In the end, in this increasingly kind of artificial world that we're in now, the best source of truth is real world human reviews, right? So we'll get into that a little bit more. And number 4, just the classic, we pay an agency to do this stuff for us. And they put a report in front of us. The numbers look like they're going up. I don't know what they're doing for us, but whatever, we have that box checked. And by the way, I'm not promoting, we don't even offer standalone SEO services, right? So this isn't a sell, but just overpaying an agency to do what might have worked 7-8 years ago. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So I tested a little bit of this on my own. And so this is a little bit of experimenting, testing, and then reading what's out, news articles and what's out there in the web. But here's what it seems like AI and Google tend to reward. So number 1, authority, right? This used to mean domain authority, right? Hey, your website, how long has it been around? How many links are pointing back to you, right? In the early phases of Google, they only had so many ways to rank these pages, right? And it boiled down to basically links and keywords on a page. So the game used to be keyword stuffing, right? I'm going to say tent rental 25 times on this page, and that hopefully helps. Or buying links, right? I'm going to have some company go out and find ways to have all these other websites backlink to me. That's what SEO used to mean in the Stone Ages, if you will. But now, think about all the other places that Google or Gemini or GPT can go and find out if you're authentic, credible. So think, A, we have reviews. We talked about that. User-generated content, right? YouTube, Reddit, right? There's so many places where your business can be mentioned or promoted or talked about, right? All things equal, if we had two very similar companies and one of them had 2,000 followers on Facebook and the other doesn't even have a social media presence, is that a factor? Probably. So what we're after is authenticity. And the main lever to get that, which we're going to see again down the road, is online reviews, right? So that's the first pillar. And the second is you got to have good structured content on your site, right? We have to have some meat on the bones, right? We can't just lay out a site, throw up a picture of a dance floor or a Shivari chair. Let's use good content, right? And what that means is, first off, content that is going to help a human, right? Maybe that means the pricing is on the page or photos from recent events. But what it also means is location references, right? I don't want to be, it doesn't really help me to rank #1 for dance floor across the entire US, but it certainly helps for me to rank #1 in Boston, right? So I'm purposefully making pages that are very, very purposefully mention location in the mix, right? So when we say structured content, like good info for a human, some info for the machines to kind of chew on, Google and the AI tools, location, and then give us some use cases, right? Okay, you rent chairs, great. These chairs, we have basic white plastic folding chairs for your backyard party, or gold Shivari chairs for your wedding or your nonprofit gala. So use some real world examples, right? So those are two big ones when we look at, hey, what do these tools actually reward? And I actually spot checked this the other day. This was really interesting. I have a lot of clients in the restroom trailer space. So I just searched, I put this into ChatGPT and to Claude. And I basically asked, hey, I'm planning a festival in Boston and I need to rent one of these luxury restroom trailers. So Claude, it pulls up a result with 3 or 4 companies. And I noticed my client wasn't listed. And I asked Claude, hey, why didn't you reference Boston restroom trailer? Why didn't you list them in your results? And Claude flat out told me it's because it was pulling from Google Places, which is now Google Business Listings, but it was pulling from the map on Google with all those reviews and directions and contacting. So all of Claude's results were based solely on reviews. ChatGPT was a little different, but kind of blended reviews with, it was clear on ChatGPT that it was actually reading the sites and picking out key pieces of information. Hey, this site might be a perfect company for you because they actually have a page on their site about festivals. So 2 really good examples from AI tools today where they are blatantly using online reviews or actual content from your site in their search, in their chat results. So let's flip to the next. So I keep harping on reviews, and I know the title of this presentation is SEO. I think most rental owners separate those 2 things, right? SEO is like, hey, I want my site to show up #1 on those 10 blue links in Google. And then customer reviews, that's something different. It's not. Reviews are SEO, right? At its core, SEO, search engine optimization, right? What do we care where? We just want more visibility. We want to optimize our chances of being seen and having our site visited and clicked on. So if Google or these AI tools are going to rely heavily on reviews, then reviews are your SEO, right? Let's pretend the AI tools don't exist. If we were just dealing with Google today, when you look at a Google search result page, there's 4 main chunks, right? We have at the very top, they're going to show ads. And it used to be really obvious what was an ad. It would be shaded a different color. It would say ad. And over the years, Google has muted that and made it look like really, it's really hard to differentiate what's an ad and what's a search result. So at the top of the page are your paid ads. They'll say sponsored results or sponsored listings. Then often, if this is a local service business, right, which that's what we're all in, right? If it's rentals or restaurant, salon, spa, plumber, whatever, if it's a local service, then Google's going to rely heavily on that map. So if we show up number 1 on that map because we've got dozens or hundreds of 5-star reviews, I would argue that's way more valuable than showing up number 1 further down the page in the natural search results, right? So we have ads, the map. Now Google has its AI search overview, right? So they're giving you like a little AI answer. And then finally, the thing that we all call SEO, the natural search results. So personally, I think I'd rather rank number 1 higher up the page on that map because of reviews, right? And the wins are, it's so much more valuable because not only do you get that visibility, right? People see your company and see it exists, but they also see it paired up with the fact that you have 125 perfect 5-star reviews from real people in your area, right? So it kind of does the selling for you, right? So it's such a giant win to the point where I'll give an example. I was doing solar. I was getting solar panels for my house. I can name the major brands, Solar City and Sunrun, but I want to know what's a good company that I can actually trust. So I lean heavily on these online reviews, and this local company comes up in my area with 250 perfect 5-star reviews. And I made my decision almost entirely based on that, right? That's how consumers think. Every company is going to say they're the best. I want to know, what do the people think, right? What do my peers, my neighbors, what do they think, right? So I'm going to argue that if you do nothing else for your business, if SEO is a little too gory, or you don't want to change your website or hire a web person to do any of this, just work on the reviews, right? Anybody can do this. And it's not technical, right? All we have to do is go out and do a good job and then ask. So let's move on to the next slide, because I think we're going to talk about asking. Yeah, so it's hard to get reviews, right? I was in this business for 18 years. I probably did 3,000 jobs over those 18 years. And I was pretty proud of myself for having about 125 5-star reviews, right? It's never going to be 1-to-1. But even if you're being very purposeful about asking, it might only be that 1 in 10 people actually go and do it, right? So we have to ask. And it can't just be when you remember, okay, promise me you'll Google my company, click on the right link, leave me a review. Too hard, too much to remember. People are busy. You have to make it easy. You have to kind of systematize this. And luckily, we're doing this with Goodshuffle. Goodshuffle they make that easy, right? There's customer communications that you can automate, right? This should be baked into the process. And I'll give a real example. What I would do is every Monday, after my events were over and I was coming to pick up the items, I would send out an email to all my customers from that weekend that said, thank you, reviews, and pics. So first off, just thank you for your business. I really appreciate it. If you want to leave us a review, here's the links to do that. And then if you have photos from the event, man, that would be really helpful, right? Because all we ever get are the sad pictures when nothing's decorated, there's no people there. So it was really helpful, and it was a real advantage to have actual real photos from real events, right? So that was another little edge for me. Again, it was authenticity. I had real pictures from real events. And even if they're not perfect or they're not the most beautiful photos, I think people appreciate that a little bit more than just stock photography or blatant AI slop, right? So you have to build a system. Luckily, Goodshuffle offers that, and you have to be persistent. And it goes without saying, you also have to do a good job, right? We don't want to ask everybody to leave us a review if we're not confident that we've been good to everybody. So it's important to have a system. It's also important to just try to service people well and do a good job. All right, so let's go next. And I should mention, I gave the solar example where I ended up buying $35,000 worth of services from this company almost purely based on reviews, right? For my own business, when I went to sell my company, this was a big part of the deal, right? I had this bulletproof online reputation. And when I looked at my analytics for my business, it was driving 40% of the traffic, right? So that's earned. Those aren't visits to my site that I have to pay for, right? That is just baked into my brand and my reputation. And it had actual tangible monetary value when I went to sell my company. So it was helping me grow. It was helping me sell, right? For a million reasons, the review thing is such a great strategy. So the flywheel, and this becomes a little obvious, right? But reviews don't just kind of add up. It starts to compound. Meaning, I ask for some reviews, right? Now I'm more visible. My business is listed on that map. It gets me more visibility. It does the selling for me on the way in, right? Before someone even clicks on my site, they can see, oh, all right, these guys look good. To the extent where my little business, I would sell out quickly. So I'd have big red messages on my site saying, look, we're sold out for June. We can't handle any more requests. I'm sorry. I would still get inquiries from people saying, please, if you have cancellations, your reviews are so great. So it's the social proof. It does this, it helps people be confident that you are a good company, right? So more visibility helps with sales on the way in, gets you more clicks to your site, which ultimately means more inquiries, which then leads to more deals, more revenue, and kind of wash, rinse, repeat. But without this, you're either paying for all of your traffic, right? You have to run Google Ads, or you have to get really creative about social media and building a big following, right? So if you can do one thing, if you do this one thing well, it can really feed the business, and it's free and it's not technical, right? So this is realistically like my little company. I didn't do anything. I wasn't the biggest company, the biggest tent rental business. I probably wasn't the best, right? But I had a good little service. I tried hard, tried to make people happy. And then I hammered the online component, right? The SEO on the site, the reviews, kind of spreading the word, right? So this was my advantage for my little business. And this is kind of the core of what I wanted to share with the group. So let's move on to the last one. So now is the unique window of opportunity, right? This 20 years of just having Google and the 10 blue links on a page, right? And we're just trying to rank number one. Those days are coming to an end, right? So now is a perfect time to be thinking about how do we get ahead of this, right? Because let's face it, most people aren't proactive, right? Your competition probably isn't thinking about this a few years in advance, but if you are, maybe that's a window to totally upscale your marketing and earn a little advantage, right? So right now the competition for this stuff might be fairly limited, right? How many of your competitors are thinking about this or know this stuff? So relatively low competition and a monster upside. If let's pretend most consumers end up using ChatGPT, right? We'll just pick one. If you can find a way to make your business the prominent or most often mentioned in those ChatGPT search answers, it's the same as ranking #1 in Google in those 10 blue links, right? So there's monster upside. And with these reviews that we keep discussing, it's fast results, right? Like SEO is a long-term play. It's going to take time, right? Google's never going to say, oh my God, there's a new wedding rental company in Detroit, Michigan. Let's rank it #1 ahead of these other 5 companies that have been around for 10 years, 15 years. SEO is a long-term play, but piling these reviews on is pretty short-term, right? It's fast. It is a great way to move the needle quickly, right? So this is a good moment in time to be proactive and get ready for the next thing, which is clearly going to be chat-based search results instead of those 10 blue links on a page. All right, so let's go next slide. All right, so tangible, like concrete, what can you do next? So #1, we talked about we have to build out a review system, right? If it's with automated with your rental management, with Goodshuffle, perfect. Otherwise, it has to be baked into your process, right? Yeah, even if it's as simple as just have the link handy. Hey, I got the link, I'm going to text it to you. Don't make somebody go to Google, hope the map pops up, hope they find your business. Remember how to leave, make it simple. So that's #1. Got to have a system and you got to ask. #2, we really have to think about the top pages on our site, right? I don't want you to have a Cheesecake Factory menu where you list out 17 products, right? Because that page isn't targeted to any one of those. That's just one big old page with all of your event rental items. Instead, I'd rather see you with landing pages for tents, tables, chairs, dance floor, linens, stage, whatever those things are, right? And in the end, we are still in a niche business, right? I'm in Boston. I don't know if there are 4 companies in the area that have a website that has a page specifically about event stage rentals, right? That's pretty niche. If all I do is build that page, I might rank because there's no other real content, there's no other competition other than what I've built, right? So fix those top pages. And when I say fix them, let's get pages that, if you're a Goodshuffle user, use the dance floor example, a page that talks just about dance floor, that pulls in all of your dance floors through tags, shows the actual inventory. But that's where a lot of people stop, right? They just, hey, I pulled in my inventory and that's what's on the page. We also need to put some content and context on the page, right? Make it useful for a human and give it some good content so that Google and these machines have something to chew on, right? So location, maybe the FAQs, right? I'm sure you're going to get frequently asked questions. Again, let's use dance floor, right? What size dance floor do you recommend for a wedding of 150 people? A, you're going to get that question at some point anyway. And B, if we can answer it right on the page, the website is almost acting like the world's cheapest employee that runs 24/7 day and night, answering these frequently asked questions, right? So now when somebody does inquire, they know the answers, they know the basics. Now they're inquiring because they basically just want to move forward. So content, FAQs, location, pulling in the actual Goodshuffle inventory onto those pages. That's the formula or the recipe for being competitive on these products, or on these rental items. And then finally, this one's interesting. Very few companies do this, but let's put pages on your site for your event types, right? Let's not make people guess, hey, is this a wedding business, or are they a good company for my little backyard baby shower? Let's build pages on your site that 100% address the question of what types of events do you do, right? So if you're in weddings, obviously we want to have a page that says like wedding rentals, or that's what we do, right? Festivals, corporate events, backyard parties, right? Whatever your best event types are, make some content there, right? When somebody goes to Google or GPT or Gemini or whatever, and they say, hey, I'm having a company meeting and I need to rent some items, right? I want to give context that these are the event types that we typically service. Because then when people ask those questions, hey, what's the best wedding rental business in Kansas City? Right now, these tools, Google and these AI tools, they have an actual page saying, oh, hey, you're looking for wedding rentals in Kansas City? Here's a page from this company that talks about exactly that. And the reward is going to be highly ranked or high visibility. So reviews, good product specific landing pages, and then good event type landing pages are three really simple things, low tech, no tech, right? And this has so much better outcomes than the classic, what we typically see when you go to any small business website or service website, and you got 5 pages: home, about us, our services, contact us, and then maybe one more page, areas we serve or something. But that's the common path, right? That's who you're competing against. So if you have pages for tables, chairs, tent packages, dance floors, stage, whatever those items are, or those event types, festival, fundraiser, community event, you've got content and you've got something unique that none of your competition has. And the search engines are looking for good content to give to their users. So that's how to pull this whole thing together. So let's move, next slide. All right, so things to keep in mind. This is not to pour cold water on this whole thing, but here's how to keep this in mind and kind of weigh this against the reality of where we are today. So all these tools, these AI tools, are becoming more prominent, they're getting more usage, but today, at the moment, Google is still, that's still the common path, right? That's still realistically the marketplace for rental related searches, right? So do we want to be proactive and get to where we're, skate to where the puck is headed, we're going next? Of course. But today, we manage 250-ish clients. I can look at their analytics and I can say I would be stunned if any of them are getting more than 5 to 10% of their traffic from ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, right? So remember where we're headed, but we also have to play under the conditions of what's happening today. So that's number one. Number two, keep in mind, people get all hot and bothered about SEO, right? If I just rank number one, my business will go to the moon. SEO is just one of your marketing channels, ideally, right? We don't want to be a one-trick pony. We don't want to rely on somebody to go to Google or ChatGPT to find us, right? We want to do the other things that are proactive, that make sense. So let's just measure SEO as against all the other things you do. It's one tool in your toolkit. So the examples I give: strategic partnerships, right? And again, I'll use that dance floor example. My company ranked very highly and I would get all kinds of leads, dance floor rentals from my website. That was great. but that didn't amount to anything compared to the business that I got from strategic partnerships with wedding venues. Right. So I had two venues in the Boston area that I was so tightly integrated with them. So I was their dance floor person for every single event. Right. So every wedding, so I would do 40, 50 dance floors a year at each one of those locations. Right. So while it's nice to rank number one for this or that, it's also important to work on and develop those other channels. Right. Strategic partnerships being a big one. And then just the other stuff, right? Not everybody relies on Google for everything, right? Referrals, word of mouth, maybe having a social media presence, right? I'm not the world's biggest believer in social media for just acquiring new customers, but it definitely plays a role, right? It's a great way to share your work, to show photos and videos. It's a great way to network, to follow the caterer in your area or the wedding venue that you're trying to break into. Social media has a role, right? So keep in mind, SEO is just one of hopefully many channels that you're working on developing. And then finally, there are no guarantees. This one drives me absolutely insane, right? There's so much hype and snake oil and misinformation around SEO because it's dense. It's a hard topic, right? It's an algorithm from Google. It's a secret. So there's a lot of nonsense in the space, right? So anyone who guarantees anything, please stay away, right? It's not realistic, right? So let's avoid guarantees. And as I mentioned, it takes time, right? Part of what some of these sites, just being around for 15, 20 years makes you the incumbent, right? And Google and these sites tend to trust who they know, right? They'd so much rather serve a page that, you know, or a website that's been live for 15 years than one that's been up for 15 days. SEO is going to take time. There are no guarantees. It's not it's a zero sum game, right? Not everybody can rank number one, right? So there's no promises that you'll ever outrank that other company that's got a 15, 20-year head start on you, right? So rather than trying to outrank them, can we out-review them, right? Can we make a better user experience on our website and build more content that gets us more visibility, right? So that's the way to think about SEO. We're trying to find clever, easy ways to compete in today's world versus following the same playbook that worked in 2017, 2018, right? So I know this is a little bit inside baseball. I purposefully didn't want to get technical on SEO because I think these are real practical things that anybody out there can chew on and implement today. All right, so let's go to the last slide, and I would just want to leave time for questions and stuff. Here's my contact info. My company is called Recipe. Do anything slick, right? This is good old-fashioned, as honest and straightforward as it gets. We typically website creation and management, and Google Ads creation and management, just the core stuff, right? I really appreciate the time, the attention. I hope this was helpful. More than happy to buzz through questions. And yeah, thank you, Dominique, and Goodshuffle. I hope this was good.
No, it was, Jim, you're quite popular. I have quite a few questions for you
All
here
right.
that we can rattle off, but thank you. And for reference, because a couple folks asked for examples, I did drop all event rental in the chat, Jim, as an example, because people were asking about the site structure and things like that. So Jim has built sites for folks, and it's wonderful to work with a couple folks. When I was an onboarding specialist, had the pleasure of helping them work with Jim, and Jim does a great job just getting sites stood up for folks. So I do want to go through some of these questions. The first one, let me go through the queue. Stephen actually asked about like your content on your site. And so content on your site is why the fluff like blog posts still matter, correct? So you still want to have things like blog posts. Would that be correct to pull?
Yeah, content still matters, right? But when my main beef with blog or paying an agency to write, they're not going to be as authentic as you are. They're writing fluff, right? You can tell when somebody's put out a blog post to just filibuster, right? Just fill up time and space. So if you have an actual story to tell it, right? It's hard to come up with good content. So not hack, but one of the little tactics that I tell people to do is just talk about events that you've done, right? Hey, we just did a company party in Hingham, Massachusetts for 125 people. So write thoughtful content. It's really tempting to just go to ChatGPT, ask it a question, copy, paste, slap it on the site, call it a blog. We know what fluff is. We know what AI slop is, right? So if you have content, you have a story to tell, great. So blog certainly plays a role, but you can tell when people are just, put it this way. I had a client who they said, oh yeah, we're doing a blog. I look at it and they're talking about, it's a giant tent rental business. And their blog post is ideas for how to celebrate mom on Mother's Day. Do we think this is actually moving the needle? No. Right. And I'll give one more quick example. Don't fall for the trap of we made a blog and now our numbers went up. I can goose the numbers. Right. I made a blog post years ago for my own business that said tents on cement. What are my options? Because the general public has no clue. Frame tent, pole tent, right? So I just made a blog post about it and said, hey, if the tent is going on cement, you probably need a frame tent held down by water barrels or cement blocks. That one blog post would get 3,000, 4,000 visits a year, right? But it was from across the country, right? It was just people who found that information helpful, right? So my numbers looked great, but none of them were in Boston looking to actually pull this off and use me, right? So yeah, I goosed the numbers, but it didn't move the needle, right? So I think that's what old school SEO or some of these companies charging for these services, they'll point to a graph and say, look, your numbers are going up. Nonsense.
The next question, we actually had a couple folks asking about, you mentioned using tags and you've actually utilized tags to help build out people's sites. So I want to make sure, because I know tags will help you group. What's the best way to maximize tags for your website? And also in terms of how does that impact SEO in general?
I'll defer a little bit to you on the good stuff, but for me, building the site, the tags is just the easiest way for me to get the job done, right? For me to say, take all the tables and chairs, right? That's what this page is about. So tag all of those items as seating or furniture, whatever that tag is, even just literally tables and chairs. And then Goodshuffle's got great documentation online. So even if you don't know anything about code, you can just follow the steps, right? So I use tags purely for simplicity, right? So yeah, I'm a marketer. I'm not a custom coder, right? I'm not a full-blown software developer. So even somebody like me who has an advantage and a head start and some information, this stuff can be tricky. So I just use tags to say, tag everything as seating. And then when I build my table and chair page, all I have to do is say, pull anything that has a seating tag and poof, there it is. So I'm using it purely for its simplicity. In terms of what it does for SEO, I think what it does best is it gives the user what they're looking for, right? And it saves you some time. I don't have to manually put in a picture of a gold Chiavari chair and the pricing, and then, oh shoot, I changed the price 6 months ago. I forgot to update it on my website, right? Put it into Goodshuffle once, and then whenever there's a change made to that product, it's automatically updated on the site. So I'm a utilitarian. I'm doing what's easiest and most practical. So that's how I think about the tags.
Definitely. And I can speak from the Goodshuffle side because there were some questions about tags being crawled. Tags are also a search function. So once you tag an item, it is attached to the item, but it does depend on how you are setting it up on your site. When I often teach folks about tags, I am similar to Jim. Tags are the simplest way to organize. So if I need a page for my tables and chairs, and I want to group it that way, I will use a tag. You can also use tags for themes. So if I need casino nights, I will create that tag. you're tagging your items, those pages are getting updated automatically. And what I'll make sure is when we send out the recording, I'll send along some additional resources on using tags. We got a lot of questions about reviews, Jim. And I know when you and I chatted, reviews were just a big thing. So I'm going to kind of group them because they're in a similar theme. The first one was the sweet spot for asking for a review. Like when, and I think you said it, it's like you ask as soon as possible and asking often.
Yeah. Yeah. Recency, right? I'm way more excited about how my party went yesterday than a month from now. And I go, it'd be nice to leave that guy a review, but I'm busy. So speed for sure. And then convenience. Don't take people's word that they're going to know how to leave you a review, right? My parents are in their early 70s. They're okay with tech, but I'd be really stunned if they were able to quickly and easily go and leave somebody a nice 5-star review from a restaurant or a local service they've used. So don't assume, right? Make it easy, plop it right in front of them through Goodshuffle, through these automated messages, or just ultra simple, get a link, text it to them, put it right in their hands, right? So speed and convenience, I think, is the name of the game for reviews. And honestly, and use it as a tool, right? I was a people pleaser, right? I think the reason why my business did was I actually care about people, and I wanted to do a nice job. I know that in the end, I don't care. I don't want a $20 tip, right? That's really nice, but I want you to leave me a review because it helps me get the next $2,000 worth of rentals. So I always thought about it as like, that should be the outcome of a job, right? Just like money is an outcome, so should a review, because when you start to stack them on top of each other, it starts to compound, right? And that was the spirit of what we covered.
Gotcha. I have a kind of a two-part. So Kayla asked about tricks for must-haves in the email, but Samantha also asked, do you have a template for review requests? A lot of folks were saying getting people to just do the review feels like the hurdle. So are there any things that should be in the email? And do you also have templates that you could possibly share or provide for folks? Or even
I
examples?
Yeah, I could probably provide the thing I used to send, but it was just as simple as it sounds. The subject line of the email was literally thank you / reviews / picks, right? Keep it simple. This doesn't need to be a work of art. It doesn't need to be perfectly written, right? You're just trying to accomplish a few things. Say thanks, get a review, right? If photos help or a like on social media, great. So I would write it once and I would save it in my Google Drive. So it is saved as a template. So I don't know if you can shave off more time other than just be thoughtful, write it once, store it somewhere as a template. If you're using Goodshuffle, you can automate all of this stuff. So no other major life hacks, right? It's just do it.
I have a question also, because I'm actually curious about this as well. So Oscar asks, how true is it that Google doesn't want you to add things like names? Working with Jim was great. Does that penalize you at all? Does Google not like that, especially in the age of AI and Gemini kind of kicking in?
No, I think it might be the opposite, right? When I did some of my homework, one of the things that AI picked up was a common theme in my reviews was Jim, right? Jim was great to work with. Jim was so fair or easygoing or whatever. So I don't think we don't need to train folks. We don't need to kind of help them craft their message. I just want to see the review, right? Volume is a part of it. Get the review. Even if they just write the company was great, right? So volume is great. And then if they really want to get more specific, even better, right? Gym was great. The chairs were nice. The tent was beautiful. The heat saved the day, right? Stuff can't hurt, but we don't need to coach people up on exactly what to say or what not to say.
Got it. Here's actually a really good one. So if you had two rental companies all lined up, who is ranking highest? The one with the most reviews, more stars, or does it come down to location specifically?
Yeah, if we knew that, we would be able to game the system. And so Google's never going to tell you, here are all the factors, because then that's everybody just gets in line and says, great, They gave us the answers to the test. Now go cheat. There's a blend of, right? It could be that this company has the most reviews. This company has slightly fewer reviews, but they're all 5-star, right? So 50 5-star reviews versus 120 reviews where the company comes in at a 3.8, right? So I think volume matters. And then, like you said, Dominique, location, right? Google is listing these businesses based on the reviews, the score. Great, this company's good, but they're 40 miles away from you. These two companies might be ranked higher because they're 5 and 10 miles away. So I'd be lying if I said I knew, but I have a feeling those are the factors, right? Location, number of reviews, and the score, right? In the end, what is your average score? 4.8, 3.6, whatever.
Got it. Andy asks, is it worth seeking out an AI tool for reviews, or should that stay really a personal person-to-person style of touch when it comes to reviews, especially when folks are like trying to get a lot of reviews and worried about just not getting enough?
I'm agnostic. I don't care what tool you use, right? The outcome is what we're after. But I know we're talking AI in general, so I'll give something resembling an answer. There's some great AI tools that they're building little widgets. And one of them is a widget that you can put on your website that automatically sucks in your Google reviews, right? So if a customer didn't see it on the way to your website, the first thing they see on your homepage is a sucked in component from Google reviews that's up to date, it's fresh, it's not a screenshot that says, look at our 5-star reviews, right? So there are tools and widgets that can connect your website and keep it current, up to date with your reviews, if that helps. But outside of that, we don't have to overcook the baby. It doesn't matter if it's just email or an AI tool. I don't care how you do it. We just have to get in the practice of doing it.
Got it. Jim, I'm able to keep you for 5 more minutes to try to get a couple more of these.
Great.
Just a quick one. Where does Yelp play into this? Someone asked about Yelp.
Yeah, good. I'll be honest. From my own personal experience, every market is different. I actually had a buddy in San Diego for years, and he said, our culture out here, it was a Yelp driven when you're talking about restaurants or bars or salons or barbershops. So markets may be different depending on how sophisticated people are in the area, if it's Google or Yelp. The problem with Yelp is it's a closed environment, right? You have to go to Yelp and then do a search and then see those reviews so that might be 5% of your search traffic, right? Years ago, if I looked at my analytics, maybe 5% came from Yelp, but in reality, the other 95% was from Google. So I'd rather have the reviews in the area that's getting 95% of the traffic. So I don't hate Yelp. I think it's probably an antiquated system that isn't nearly as used. It was great for what it was at a time. And then the big red flag for me is like Yelp, as soon as you set up, you can have a free listing, but they're going to try like
They're
crazy to
calling
get
you.
eggs. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't want to besmirch a giant, successful billion-dollar company, but I don't know.
For the last one, if anyone we don't get to, I'm going to export the chat so that way I can get these over to you, Jim, and we can get answers to folks. But I do have a 2-parter. From working with you, I know you work a lot in Squarespace, but there was questions around like Yoast SEO, which lives in WordPress, which then brought up the question of does the platform matter? Do certain website platforms outperform when it comes to SEO?
Yeah. Yeah. And yes, right. But we're talking about like marginal benefit, right? So if Yoast is a 3% advantage over using Squarespace or something. So does it matter? Sure. Does it matter at the scale and volume that we're doing in the event rental space? If we are CNN.com or some giant publisher where their whole business revolves around getting more clicks and getting more traffic, then I'm sure these little microscopic things matter. For us, honestly, I'd rather you be on a platform that you can use easily, right? You're never going to change your website if you're sitting there thinking, man, I got to update this site, but it's going to take me 3 hours. It's hieroglyphics to me. I hate this stuff. So it's like going to the gym, right? It only works if you're actually showing up and using and doing it, right? So I'd rather you have something that's convenient to actually use than the perfect tool that's 3% better than the next one. And for us, I chose Squarespace because it is so user friendly. It's what I built my sites on, right? I kind of wanted to practice what I preach. It's probably not the best SEO platform out there, but it's really solid and it's usable and it's priced reasonably. So there's no, it's only trade-offs, right? So if you're comfortable, like the creme de la creme is probably a custom site with WordPress, with Yoast, right? That's probably the correct answer. But if it makes a 5-10% difference versus something that you're actually going to go in and be able to use, I'd almost rather see you pick a platform and a tool that you can manage and change, right? I'll give a good example. With Squarespace, I mentioned that I used to have these big red announcements at the top of my site that says, hey, we're sold out for June. We can't help. I could literally put that message up from an app on my phone in 30 seconds, right? I didn't have to log into WordPress, figure out where that plugin lives. So convenience, accessibility, that stuff matters. So I think that's my answer.
Yeah, and what I will say for anyone just getting started with Goodshuffle that may be here, or maybe you don't have a website yet, that's also why we have templates for our integration with Squarespace. We have found it that is the easiest one, that if you need to just bring somebody in to help you get started and then self-manage, we have templates essentially for that reason. So it's not that it's necessarily, we don't say that Squarespace is better. We have found it to be one of the better user experiences. I also have never built a website, and Squarespace was the easiest as we were learning here at Goodshuffle with the integration. Perfect. We are at time. There are a couple more. So Jim, what I'm going to do, I'm going to export the questions and get the ones to you that we weren't able to get to. And then I have the person's email, so I'll be able to make sure that we follow up. And then you all have Jim's information here on the screen. The session was recorded today, so you'll be able to watch this out once everything exports. Jim, any last words, final words of advice you'd like to give before we wrap?
I appreciate the time. Final words of advice, right? For my little business, I was not the best event rental practitioner, right? But I ran a good human-based business, right? If you can be fast, fair, and friendly, that's a giant chunk of this thing, right? And then if you can be smart, right? Hey, I did a great job for 10 people this weekend. It's nice that I know that, but it's way better for my business if everybody else knows that, right? That's where the review piece came from, right? Or it's nice to have a beautiful looking website, but if you can't make changes to it, if you can't manage it, then it's just going to sit stale. And so be pragmatic. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. That's like my favorite expression, right? Just go do this stuff, right? You don't need the best of whatever. You need the thing that you can actually learn and use that gets results.
Beautiful. I had a question about the recording. Recording will be sent out along with all resources. And for those asking, yes, you absolutely can share the recording to your teammates, to other folks who would need it. It'll go up on our website as well. So it will be readily available wherever you need to send it. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. Keep in tune for our next webinar. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.